Come on in, everybody. Welcome back to the Holler. Figured I would jump on here and talk about last night's wild meeting in Williamson County. I was there in Franklin. It was madness. Just kind of wanted to play you guys some videos from it. We could talk about what happened. If you have any comments about it, feel free to comment along. Definitely love to know if any of you all were there, what you thought, if you guys were following along as we live tweeted it. Before I get into that, we're at tnholler.com is where you can find us. You can help the Holler by chipping in a few bucks monthly. You guys are what keep us going, truly. Big thanks to the Tennessee Equality Project for supporting us. If you chip in 10 bucks a month or more, we'll give you a Holler hat, and we have Hollers across the state. So thank you for all of that. All right, so let's talk about it. Last night was absolutely absurd. I see John saying the post-crazy hangover is real today. It really is. I mean, I live here in Williamson County. I have two small kids. One is just starting public schools this year. She's going to kindergarten. She was absolutely affected by what happened last night. Just to tell you kind of the upshot of it is that there will be a mask mandate in Williamson County for elementary school aged kids only because, and the reason is that elementary school age kids are not eligible for the vaccine yet. They're not 12 and older. They also are not eligible for remote learning. So they can't remote learn. They can't get the vaccine. They have to go to school. And that's why Williamson County decided they wanted to mandate masks as a precautionary measure, mitigation. The vote went 7-3. So I'll show you some pictures from last night, and then I'm going to show you some videos. But, there were a lot of people there on both sides. I would say definitely the anti-maskers outnumbered the maskers pretty significantly, and had a lot of signs. They had their signs, their pro-choice signs, without any sense of the irony behind the pro-choice messaging that they use and how it doesn't pertain to women's reproductive rights. They don't even want to acknowledge that their pro-choice arguments should carry over to abortion, but don't. This was outside. Masks save lives. The pro-maskers actually got there earlier and secured places in line, which they then transferred to these doctors that were there to speak in favor and support of masks. The anti-maskers were also along the road outside with their signs. They were being very loud. There were arguments before it even started. There were arguments outside, and people were getting in each other's faces, yelling, pull your kid out if you don't like it, which goes both ways, frankly. So I'm not sure how that's really an argument. I see Brent saying, I'm disappointed Golden didn't come to the meeting with a plan for 11-year-olds in 6th grade. That actually was an amendment that Jennifer Aprea offered for under 12 kids that are not in elementary school anymore. It was voted down, I think 5-5, if I'm not mistaken. So it failed 5-5. But that was an amendment that was offered. The whole meeting lasted 4 hours. And just to tell you where we are with things, this is today. Hospitalizations have gone up like 6-fold since July 4th. So, we're not in a good place right now. See if you could tell looking at this map which area is most susceptible to misinformation, folks. Yes, the South is spiking in a very real way that the rest of the country is not. And I think we all know why that is, so I'm not going to spend too much time about that. Hillary for Latina says, so hypocritical, they're pro-life but don't care about kids' lives. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a fair point to point out that, this pro-life crowd does not seem to be as concerned about the lives of kids. Their defense is, well, kids are committing suicide, which I don't think the numbers back that up. This is their rallying point. This anti-mask thing, they're anti-mask, they're anti-vaccines. And, I think my biggest takeaway last night was just how childish they all were. I mean, it was wild because the deliberations that were going on from the board meeting, they were being respectful of one another. they didn't agree about everything, but they were at least, letting each other speak, having the dialogue. But the anti-maskers in the audience were being so aggressively abrasive, so childish, shouting out throughout the thing. A few did get kicked out, which I'll show you in a minute. They were just being so over the top. It was like if your kid acted the way that they were acting last night, you would be mortified. You would take your kid out and be like, you cannot do this. That's what you would do if your kid was acting the way these parents were acting last night. And, I've seen some people ask, were they even parents? And I would say some of them were, some of them probably were not. But this was Emily West, who covers these school board meetings, saying, I've never seen such outbursts and rude behavior at a public meeting in Williamson County. This is terrible. Completely agree with her. I mean, it was shockingly atrocious behavior on the part of these anti-mask folks. Holly McCall, my good friend, said, my hat's off to anyone who wants to serve on any school board. What a job. I mean, yeah, I was sitting there going, why are these school board members wanting this job? Like it's wild, but I respect and appreciate that they're doing it. We need people to run for office because, the people who are there doing that are going to show up and run for office. I think we all know that. Carol says they're not pro-life, they're pro-birth. I agree with you. They're hypocrites, says Hillary. Were the claims that kids are committing suicide because of wearing a mask at school? Yes, that is what they were saying. 100%. That's what they were saying. And what Sheila Cleveland said, and I don't think Sheila Cleveland is a Democrat. I don't think that her politics align necessarily with, a lot of the progressive people, but she pointed out that the masks are intended to keep schools from having to close. And that is what actually causes depression among kids and sends kids home. It's the closing of schools, which is what they were trying to avoid. So let me see if I can pull up what Sheila Cleveland said. Maybe it's this one. I have some clips here for you guys. This is Sheila Cleveland pointing out why she is against, why is she's for a mask mandate, because it keeps schools open.
Kids in elementary school kids cannot go online. Their education really suffers, and that's what we're all about, is education. And we proved that last year. It just was not a free site. And if these kids go remote, it's going to hurt them. And then we also have to think about the families. We've got a lot of two-income families. Financially, it really hurt them last year. The ones that, somebody had to stay home.
Okay, so that's Sheila Cleveland. And Sheila, I don't know her that well. I've met her. She's a nice woman. I don't think she's like a progressive liberal. That's not her politics. But she's pointing out that these masks are intended to keep schools from having to close. A very reasonable way of looking at things, in my humble opinion. And I appreciate that she had that to say, and she was a vote for it. Now, that is the reasonable side of things. Now, let me show you the very unreasonable side of things. This was a video taken by Williamson homepage. This was after the meeting, or at least this might have been during the meeting. People started to leave because it went pretty late. Actually, that's not the right one. Sorry. It went pretty late. So some people were leaving as it was going on. It went to like 10 p.m. I stayed the whole time. But as this guy was leaving, this doctor who had testified, this is what was going on outside.
We know who you are. Keep it calm. No more masks. Keep it calm. Keep it calm. No more masks. We're on these guys' side. They're on our side. No, they're not. They're not on our side. The police are on our side. The police are on our side. But calm down. Yes. Calm down. We know who you are. We know who you are. You can leave freely, but we will find you, and we know who you are. We know who you are. You will never be allowed.
We know who you are. You will never be allowed in public again. We will find you. These are threats. And I love that the guy's like, calm down, calm down. We know who you are. Like, guys all over the place. They're all hopped up on, testosterone and disinformation. And they're threatening this doctor who was there. You can see him taking pictures of them. I mean, it was scary. Like, this is hundreds of people standing there yelling at this guy, holding up signs, all because he went in and testified saying, please require masks to take care of children. And, this is just absolutely crazy. That guy, the bald guy, actually was saying like, no angry faces. Like they've clearly got this thing where, if they get pictures taken of them looking angry, that's bad for the cause. But, they couldn't help themselves. And screaming at this guy who had testified, he was a doctor, he was just doing what he thought was right. And the board itself, they're democratically elected people. They ran for office. They were voted in. This is the decision they're making. These people hate democracy when it doesn't work in their favor. And I'm hard pressed to think of anything less American, more un-American than being against democracy, which is what we were founded on. So if you don't like the process, run for office and try to change it. Sitting around screaming at doctors, screaming in meetings, getting kicked out. This is really scary stuff, and it's just a testament to where we are. Ed says it's scary stuff. In the wealthiest zip code in the state, he's right about that. And Charlotte says money and cents are not the same, which is true. So that was pretty scary. Again, that was from the Williamson homepage. I did not take that video, but I just wanted to show that clip and pull that out and highlight it because it was so shockingly terrible, and just shows what a lot of people are going through. You say brainwashed. I couldn't agree more. It was wild. General Hayden shared that insanity. That's interesting. Okay, I'll look for his share of that. And then that wasn't the only nonsense going on inside the meeting. There was a nurse who apparently worked at St. Thomas in Nashville, and he had been getting in the faces of women with masks on outside, and I saw him and I talked to him, and he told me that there is no pandemic. This was him. I'm told his name is Scott by somebody who recognized him. He was getting in the faces of some women. I said, stop getting in their faces. So he got in my face. Then I pulled out my camera and started recording him, and this was our conversation.
So there's no pandemic?
No pandemic.
What are you doing here?
Hey, how are you?
So then this was a woman who says, what are you doing here? She recognized him from work. She was an actual COVID ward nurse. He is not a COVID ward nurse. And she pulled him aside and was like, what are you doing?
What are you up to?
We need to talk.
About what?
Oh, you know each other?
Yes.
Okay.
You work with this guy?
Yes.
Yeah,
People's lives are in his hands?
that's right.
Yeah.
Correct.
And there's no pandemic?
The mask don't
Do
work.
healthcare workers think there's no pandemic? Over 600,000 people are dead. Does Phil Valentine think there's no pandemic?
The TV thinks there's a
Phil
pandemic.
Valentine. What does
Have
he
you done the
think?
numbers
You know
from
who Phil
2000?
Valentine
I know
is?
who's Phil Valentine.
Do you listen to him?
Yeah, I do.
Are you going to listen to him about this now?
No.
No? Even though he said there was no
I've been doing this for
pandemic?
22 years, bro.
So it's only when it.
I've been doing
it's
this
only
for
when it
22
impacts
years.
you, right?
Whatever.
Is it only when it impacts you?
It's going to impact you one day.
All right. So that guy is apparently a nurse, works at St. Thomas. Lives are in his hands, not wearing a mask. I would imagine he wears a mask at the hospital. I mean, I would hope. Is he going to walk into the COVID ward with no mask on? Maybe he should be forced to. St. Thomas, I haven't reached out to them. I'm curious to know what they think about this guy. But it's pretty scary stuff. I'm seeing my buddy Eric Patton's on here saying, woo, honey, that was a mess. Check out Eric Patton on TikTok, folks. He's doing good work over there. He talked about this last night. Yes, Terry, this is Marshall Blackburn's home county, but I'm not done with this guy because later that day, once we were inside at the meeting, this guy was the very first person to get kicked out, which I guess should probably surprise nobody. This was the aggressive Nashville St. Thomas nurse leading the charge, getting kicked out first. And then he was followed out by all of these people. Will not comply. So you get the idea. I would say as much as like I disagree with the guy, I'm also horrified by the way that he handles himself. Like for St. Thomas to have a nurse that thinks this is an okay way to behave, where he's just standing in the back yelling and, pointing at doctors. And I mean, it's almost his bedside manner that is more offensive than the fact that he's saying that there's no pandemic. But it's pretty horrific. They were chanting no more masks. They're chanting will not comply. And, that part itself, I think, is quite interesting because, as we all know, and as I'm not the only one to point out, for people to say will not comply, I can almost guarantee that these very same people were saying that all Black people need to do is comply to not be shot by police. And Murray County, our Murray County Holler, pointed this out as Mayor Andy Ogles, who wants to be governor, is saying, I will gladly sign your child's religious exemption for mandatory masks in school. Murray Holler says, I guarantee, he said, Black men would be alive if they had simply complied. Absolutely. These are 100% the same people who say that. And here they're now showing us that they don't actually mean that you need to comply if it's something that they don't like. So that was this dude getting kicked out. There were more and more people got kicked out. There was a woman who said that she wouldn't ask people to mask up, even if they were around her daughter who has stage 4 cancer. And then there was Candy Emerson, a school board member, saying that we just need to trust teachers, which I thought was really interesting. And I'll play that for you.
You've got teachers that are trained, that know what to do. They are never, ever going to put those children in harm's way. They are never going to do anything in their classroom that is going to compromise their education.
So that's interesting, right? Like, here's Candy Emerson saying they're never going to compromise their education, and the maskers were clapping. Yeah, teachers are never going to put kids in harm's way. Well, these very same people are not trusting teachers to teach the truth about our history and, race and racism. So on the one hand, it's like, oh, trust teachers. They're not going to infect our kids, which, by the way, we're protecting teachers with this stuff also. Like, teachers want this. They're saying, oh, you're going to chase teachers away. No, teachers want to be protected. They don't want to be forced to go into schools where they have no protection. And now she's saying, oh, teachers, trust them, trust them, trust them. Well, if you trust them so much, how about you let them teach the truth to our kids? And, in this very same building last month, these same people were there showing up saying, take funding away if these teachers, teach things that we don't like to our kids. So, there is no consistency to these things that they're saying. And it's really infuriating, but, they don't actually hear themselves, it seems sometimes. And so that's Candy Emerson. She was one of the 3 votes to not do the mask mandate. And then, one of the other big questions that kept coming up was, well, is it legal for them to even enforce mask mandates legally? And the answer, according to the school board, is yes, it is legal for the school board to enforce a mask mandate. They asked for legal advice. One of the decisions that Tennessee Stands and Rep. Griffey keep pointing to is that the Williamson County judge said he's not convinced that they have the authority to enforce a mask mandate, but not convinced is not ruling that they do not. So there's been some trickery going on from Rep. Griffey and Tennessee Stand saying, well, the judge said you can't. No, the judge didn't say you can't. The judge said he was not convinced, did not make a ruling, but they're running with that anyway. And in fact, dismissed the lawsuit against the Williamson County School Board because Tennessee Stands did not have standing to do it because they had not actually taken action against the family and their kids. So it was dismissed. They tried to say, okay, Williamson County ruled that they don't have the authority. That is not what happened. And if you don't believe me, I hope you'll believe this guy. Governor Lee said the same thing this week.
Recommend that they institute a mask mandate.
First, he's going to say he believes that it should be parents' choice. But even he, at the end of this, you'll see, has to concede that school districts do have the authority to impose a mask mandate. He thinks it should be up to parents. And we'll talk about it after.
I would recommend that they listen to the parents of the children in their school district. I would recommend that, and I would suggest that no one cares more for the children of the state than the parents of those children. That no one knows better what's best for a child than that child's parents.
Is that true?
It is true.
I mean,
I love that Blake Farmer's like, are you sure? Like, have you met some of these parents?
I'm talking about
It is
the
true.
science of this.
It is true. A parent knows best about their own individual child and what's best for them. So what I would encourage, and I've encouraged school districts to do this, they need to listen to their parents. And the way our state, the laws in the state are set up, school districts have the authority to make those decisions. Those school boards are elected.
Okay, so there it was. Like, he sort of threw it away. Like, school districts have the authority to make those decisions. The school boards are elected. Okay, there it is. There's the legal advice that he got. Governor Lee, he's relaying that. And so as Speaker Sexton is asking him for a special session, probably, I think officially maybe, but definitely behind closed doors. And as Governor Lee is getting bombarded by all these people on the right, the extremist Tennessee Stand sent them a letter saying, we need a special session to ban mask mandates. Governor Lee is telling you that he has gotten legal advice that actually school districts do have the authority to do this. And so he is deferring to school districts, which in a way, is consistent because he throughout COVID has said local control, local control. And here he is actually abiding by that.
In those communities, and those school boards should listen to the parents, and parents should have an option in that. Yes.
Governor.
So there he is saying he wants parents to have the choice. Yes, and he is weak. There's no question. I mean, this is a weak man. Like, he's like weaseling his way into a position, but it's not really a position. He's not saying masks. He's not saying no masks. He's simultaneously kicking the can to parents and school boards, but in a way also taking a stand against Sexton. Like, it's a weird box that he's put himself in where he himself kind of doesn't even have a position on this. But, so far, if he agrees with himself, we should not have a special session because he's saying, yes, school districts do have the authority to do this. So that's kind of where we are legally. I don't think that that's going to satiate the people on the right who want more from him to, take action and ban these mask mandates, which Arkansas did, but then a federal judge blocked their mask mandate ban, which Governor Hutchinson over there appreciated because he regretted signing it. So there's a lot of craziness going on. And I want to show you another clip from last night because it just shows like how nuts this has all gotten. This was a veteran who was there. And, he prefaced this by saying these threats are nonviolent, but they felt pretty violent. And this was his threat.
We will come for you politically and financially. You have awakened the 8th Army, and we will come for you, and the Holy Spirit is coming with us.
You have awakened the 8th Army. We will come for you. The Holy Spirit is coming with us. I mean, like anything that was menacing and violent and, threatening, that got the biggest applause from these people. And, again, I feel for the board. I feel for the people who put themselves in this position, and Brad Fiskus especially got mentioned a lot, probably because, his wife, Dr. Fiskus, was fired by Governor Lee and they've been on TV a lot. If one child dies, how would you feel if you said no mask? This was actually the point that came up a lot last night. A lot of the board members were basically saying the worst case scenario, if we have them wear masks, is that they have to wear masks. The worst case scenario is if we don't, is that kids die. And, that came up a lot. And that's why the people in the audience kept yelling, suicide, suicide, suicide. Like, but the numbers don't support that more kids died because they were wearing masks. So they're using suicide to make their political point, which is especially gross, honestly. Let's see. Civil Watkins says it plays into Lee's game. He can play to the right, and no school systems are going to do what's right for their students. It's a win-win for him. Well, it is a win-win for him, except that he may get primaried from the right, which, so we'll see if it's a win-win for him in the end. April says, I'm embarrassed. I've lived in Williamson County all my life. Yeah, it was embarrassing. It really was embarrassing last night. It was embarrassing. It was, it makes you think twice about living here, frankly, and I've been here 5 years now. We're not going anywhere. This is where our kids are growing up, but you look around, you go, my goodness, this is what this place is about. But, it really sort of isn't too, because we did elect the school board, and the school board just did something that, you have to say was a pretty reasonable thing. And Nancy Garrett spoke up and reminded these people that even though they are there and loud and the majority in the room that night, they are not necessarily the majority, period. And that, a lot of people didn't show up because they were afraid for their health. And a lot of people, had 2 kids or jobs or, things that made it so that they couldn't show up. And Nancy Garrett did a nice job of reminding them of that.
There are people who are not here because it is risky for them to be here. So I feel like they need a voice in this meeting as well. So here's my tally that I spent my whole weekend working on, and it's updated through this afternoon at 3 p.m. I had 781 emails requesting masking. I had 348 emails against masking.
Okay, so
who are not here.
So a couple things there. Like, I think the biggest takeaway there that I hope everybody takes away with you and tells people is your emails matter. Reaching out to these people, phone calls, emails, all the stuff you're doing, that matters. I mean, look at this. This was Nancy Garrett holding up a tally that she did about who she heard from more and using that to influence a meeting, influence her vote. So I want people to understand that, when people encourage you to email and give you tools to email and call, it matters. It affects things. It impacts things. And I think you should feel empowered by that. And I appreciate that Nancy Garrett pointed that out last night, because we were in a room full of anti-maskers who were angry and loud, but that is not this whole county. That's just who showed up. And it's important to remember and keep perspective. They say, oh, Twitter's not the real world. Well, neither is that room last night. And so, there's a lot of people out there. Does email Marsha Blackburn count? No, it doesn't. She doesn't care. You got to know who to email. That's a good point. No, emailing Marsha will not do you any good. Emailing Haggerty will not do you any good. Terry says Blake Farmer's question was justified. This meeting was proof. Absolutely. No question. Civil Watkins, who is a school board member, says, I encourage you to email and text. It definitely matters. Fill out surveys, communicate. Numbers have power. So that's really good to hear. I have 2 more videos to play you guys. Actually, just one. This was Clay Travis, who was, he's a right-wing radio guy, but mostly focuses on sports, but never passes up an opportunity to come and rabble rouse for attention. This was him last night telling people not to comply, and he continued speaking even after he was cut off.
Don't let your kids wear masks.
Mr. Brackett, your time is up.
Your time is up. My time is not up. Like, these people don't follow rules they don't like. It's really simple. If they don't like a rule, forget it. And you don't want to teach kids about privilege. That's privilege right there. Just standing there saying, my time's not up, and cheering and making noise and not paying attention to the rules and not listening and threatening doctors. It's gross what was going on last night. It's embarrassing. It's childish. It's a horrible example for our kids. And so I appreciate that the school board took a stand. I mean, look, I'm going to be frank. I don't like wearing a mask. I don't want my 5-year-old to have to start kindergarten this week with a mask on. I don't want that. But the numbers are spiking and kids are getting sick and dying. And so if my daughter wearing a mask for a month or however long it takes saves even one kid, it's worth it. So I hope people can see how horrible they looked in these videos and understand that people are trying to do the right thing for children and come at this from a different place in their hearts. I like to think of Williamson County as a place that has a heart where people care about one another and, put kids first. And that's not what I saw last night at all. And it really made me sad. It was a tragic moment. And I really want to know how you guys feel about it. So make sure you keep following the Holler. Appreciate you guys joining me here. Follow all the Hollers across the state. Chip in if you can. It keeps us going and growing. And, we'll keep covering this. And also, please keep sending us stories because so much of what we cover comes from you. And I really do appreciate it. So thanks for following, and we'll talk to you soon.